All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a new guide. This one on how diplomacy and the new treaty system works in 1.9. It's going to be a bit of a shorter one today because it's not too much to get into, but there are some caveats to get in. And thanks to the 1.9.5 hotfix that we're on, they have fixed some of the prevailing issues of bugs with it. So we are going to dig into it now. The new treaty system, while there are some existing starting treaties, it does have a lot that goes into it. So we are just going to go and negotiate a new treaty with Spain. And there are a lot of articles that can be done. Some of them we can't even do because we don't meet their certain requirements. But articles are now how you do most agreements. You don't no longer just ask someone to take your debt. You no longer ask someone just for investment rights and that's it. They are now all in their treaties. And while, yes, you could ask for it by themselves and maybe the AI will accept, generally, treaties are a bit of give and take. You're either offering them something in return or you're so powerful they fear you. And we're going to start with the most easiest one, trade privileges. This is actually one of the new articles for 1.9, which basically gives trade advantage whenever you're trading with that giver's market. So that depends on how much they're exporting of good and how much you're importing. But this is where we see our first one. If you are offering the AI a treaty, an article, they're happy to be gifted. If you're literally just saying, hey, have trade privileges, Spain, and that's it, Spain's happy to take it. They don't care. You want to do this for 99 years? Sure. Yeah, we'll do it. Why not? But say you also wanted trade privileges. Well, now the AI has changed its opinion a bit. Now it considers this article an equal exchange. And this is quite literally the AI recognizing this is an equal treaty. We're getting the exact same thing out of it, so we're going to be more likely to agree to it. You can also see there are other modifiers as well, such as what is their GDP to ours, what is the monetary value of a mutual trade. And you can see that on the other side too. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's different depending on circumstances. So yes, there are a lot of factors that go into their acceptance of this. Let's say we offer military assistance to Spain in exchange for trade privileges and a power block. Well, they're not quite keen on that whole power block thing. They really don't like that idea. They're pretty economically independent because we're a trade league, and they've got powerful protectors. So even though they might like us, this is kind of pushing them away from it because it pulls them closer to our sphere of influence. And we can even see here, diplomatically, the Spanish very much like us, and we have a difference in power ranking, and our army's slightly stronger, but our governments are ideologically different. This has an effect on every treaty and its acceptance. So governments that are more ideologically aligned, easier to get along with. If you're really strong and powerful, that can have an effect too. If we go over to the Netherlands here and basically just ask for power blocks and trade privilege, they're actually almost there to where they might start thinking about it. And the reason why is because we have that army power. We have a similar government. We have a higher rank. This alone is giving us an additional 26 in our leverage to get them to agree. However, the AI is not guaranteed to agree unless they have plus 30 or more acceptance. There was a bug making it to where they were auto-declining even at 30 in some cases. In other cases, it was due to certain directional articles changing at the last second while they were being processed. We're going to try to go through a lot of these articles as well, but we'll just kind of send that to the Netherlands now. And we can see they've agreed to it with a binding period of 5 years. Now, what does that mean? Shush, Greece, we're busy. What that means when a treaty has a binding article, the simplest thing is that if we were to withdraw from it right now, we actually won't take any penalties. The reason why is because we aren't offering anything. We're not giving anything to the Netherlands in return. They're just giving us something. So if we withdraw right now, it means nothing. We're basically just relieving them of their obligations. But say we do this with Spain, we come up with an agreement that they're actually fairly agreeable to because of the difference in GDP, the monetary value of our trade, and the fact the Spanish economy is not that big and they could use the investment. You know, they might accept. We could offer them trade privileges that would up it. Or if we give them an obligation, which you can't renege on once you offer it, or once you've given it, you can still do it before they accept the treaty. That would push them over 30. That would get them to accept it. And of course, each treaty has diplomatic maintenance costs as well, but they have increased the amount of influence you get from technologies to compensate for the extra spending that we tend to do now. But if we wanted these and we didn't want to give the obligation, we'd have to give Spain something in return. We could give them a defense pact, which they'd very much like because we can very much defend them. We could guarantee their independence, which, okay, they like that. It basically says we'll come to their aid and they're not obligated to do the same. We could give them investment rights too. And the AI is usually pretty open to investment rights, I've noticed. If you're offering it to them, especially great powers, unless the great powers hate you, they will pretty much always agree to be given investment rights. Could offer them military assistance as well, but they're not as fancy on that because our power protection difference. They have no debt to take, so they don't care. Well, they actually do have a little bit of debt, but they really don't care about it right now. It's whatever. There's multiple things you can offer. You could offer all of this to get Spain to accept if you wanted to, or to help just pull it into your power block better, because a lot of these do generate leverage still. There are also more specific ones, like goods transfers. As an example here, the Spanish are actually lacking 10 artillery. We can offer them a bit of artillery. Now, you're probably wondering, why don't we just offer them a ton of artillery? Well, if you offer too much, they're going to say no, because then you're just going to collapse the market price, and they don't want that. So we can't go over here and offer them any iron beyond, say, 93, because we would just crash the iron price in the market, and that could hurt their economy, so they don't really care. Now, goods transfers do kind of have a weird caveat. It doesn't tell you here. You will need to spend money to buy these goods, and then you will make money by selling these goods to Spain. It's kind of like you're a trade center, only you're really bad at making profit. There's also the money transfer article that works both ways, and the AI is usually, up to a point, pretty happy to be given money, but it does depend on multiple factors. Do we have a budget surplus or a deficit? Do we have loans? What's the economic difference? And then up to plus 75 from input. It also means the AI is pretty reluctant to give you money unless they are absolutely filthy rich, and even then they might not do it. In fact, I'm noticing the budget surplus negative, but this might be negative of, yeah, it's a surplus of like 500. You can also offer to not apply any subventions or tariffs to various goods. The AI is usually only interested in goods that it actively exports, from what I've noticed. So Spain isn't really interested in any of those articles. But if we headed over to Russia for a new treaty involving subventions, we can see they actually would love it if we didn't do anything on wood, so the Russians can keep being the ones that export wood. And they'd also be happy if we agreed to not tariff any wood. Now, you can't do this indefinitely. You can't do a subvention and a tariff, but if you start to add too many of these agreements, you will start to get a malice from too many, so you can't just stack 15 of each and then get a free treaty port. Which, yes, that's how treaty ports work now, too. If you were to go down here, usually nations won't want the state, as in they won't want the treaty port there. And they're usually pretty reluctant to give you treaty ports, mainly depending on how populated and rich the state is. But say we go to Galicia here, the Spanish are pretty reluctant from offering a state. We'd have to really offer them a lot of stuff for this to even be remotely considered. Even after offering all of this, they're still pretty reluctant. We could go as far as to throw money in there. Like, we could throw copious amounts of money in their face too. And that now they might agree, 15% chance. But you probably don't want to spend 113k for a Spanish treaty port. That's ridiculous. But there is also this prohibiting trade on the world market. It is quite literally as it sounds. It will prohibit the nation from importing and exporting a specific type of good. That is something you can utilize if you're trying to, say, dominate the fish industry and you want to be the main exporter of fish, so you stop someone else from exporting fish. That being said, I have not really messed with this one that much. In fact, the Spanish would actually agree to not import or export sugar, which is very interesting considering most of their buy orders are exportations of sugar. But they would actually agree to this. On top of the defense pact, we could probably ask them for something in exchange. It would be pretty, well, that and the obligation, I forgot the obligation. We could ask them to pay us 1.4k a week for a period of 25 years, and they'd be bound to this. Now, bound periods, the AI can still break, even if they are going to face a severe penalty. And in some cases, withdrawing from it altogether can still cause a penalty, such as bidirectional truces and upsetting appeasements, depending on the article in question, such as an alliance. Going back to Spain here, we also have a few more that you can't quite do. For example, we can't do military access because we're not adjacent to one another. This is also a new article that lets you march your army through another country in order to invade a different country. An example would be if France got military access from Spain here, France could then use that to start a land invasion into Portugal with its army. Of course, there are limits to the number of armies you can send for that. But for other treaty parts, we're actually going to go over to Japan. The reason why we're going over to Japan here is to show off a couple of additional directional articles that you can't do otherwise, such as offer embassy. This, as of 1.9.4, has been made to where each embassy that is established and active gives a +1 per month to the progress, or sorry, +1 per week. I'm thinking Stellaris terms there, to the journal entry to become recognized. So this is a way to help various unrecognized powers become recognized. It also means you can use that yourself as an unrecognized power, and that they're pretty open to that idea. As well as being offered a defense pact. That already makes the Japanese pretty happy here. Say we wanted to do all that for a treaty port. If we chose the Ryukyu Islands, we could actually get it, but you have to keep in mind that's a treaty port in an island that has very few people. It's going to be difficult to actually operate the treaty port there since they are now treated as a part of that nation's market rather than your own. So all in all, treaty ports are probably the hardest to get, on top of getting people to accept your debt, to kind of wipe away said debt. And there's usually pretty good sweet spots like this right here for transfer articles in order to get it down. But obviously they're not going to accept this. Preferably, they don't want to get a treaty port. You're usually going to have to fight for them. I should also mention AI attitudes still matter a great deal. Where's diplomacy? So, genial, obviously you may have seen this before when you're checking out Spain and the Netherlands. Genial AIs tend to be very receptive to treaties with you, while antagonistic AIs would rather throw you to the bottom of the ocean than ever agree to a treaty term with you, even if you're offering them things. Now, the sole exception might be if you're offering them money, as if you're offering tribute, but even then, the extreme antagonism could push them away from it. Clouds of anti and pro lobbies in both nations also matter for treaty acceptance. So, funding lobbies, which you can still choose to do unilaterally, still is pretty useful. After all, having various pro clouds for you can be very beneficial. I don't know if we have any at the moment, though. We are kind of, we are just Germany over here. We should have one in Sweden, actually. I know we had one in Britain, but Britain hates us right now. So we can see here, we actually get +11 from the pro-German lobbies in Sweden. So even though Sweden is cautious with us, our rank difference, army, ideological similarities, and the pro-German lobby make it to where they're more likely to accept a treaty with us. There are also cases where they will actually want a power block embassy. In this case, for the Trade League, being economically dependent and having monetary value of trade, along with leverage already in there, can all help in establishing the embassy. It makes it easier. You can also, of course, guarantee the independence, give military assistance, set it for 25 years, and then suddenly see your leverage explode in the Netherlands. Sweden, sorry, Netherlands. Because now you can see trade, guarantee, military assistance, power block, they all have those effects on top of any modifiers you might have. Of course, I mentioned before, if you withdraw from a treaty, while it still has that binding period, it's going to cause problems. So, for the sake of this, we're going to withdraw from this treaty. You'll see we've broken it in violation of the standing binding period. We have actually gained 20 infamy for that, and a 10-year modifier stating that we're an untrustworthy country. That does not end there, though. If we now go and try to negotiate treaties or renegotiate treaties, we get the -25 untrustworthy country modifier, making it harder to negotiate treaties with anyone, including renegotiating treaties we already have. So think carefully before violating a treaty. Also, if you're providing certain things like military assistance, it can improve their opinion, but we also just violated a treaty, so they're probably pretty upset right now, all things considered. So it doesn't tell you that you're going to violate, or you're going to gain infamy when you violate, but generally speaking, if you are offering anything and you withdraw, it's a violation. But if you withdraw from it while offering nothing, you did violate the standing period, which does still give you untrustworthy country, but you weren't really offering anything, so the penalty here is very small. But as you can see, each time you act as an untrustworthy country, it is going to hurt you. It is going to make it harder for you to negotiate. I believe the modifier, the -25, only sticks once, but the infamy decay, which is definitely not fun early on until you're too strong to kill it to be killed, definitely not fun for anyone to go through. There are also certain treaty terms that cannot be renegotiated once negotiated. States that are transferred, for example, these cannot be renegotiated once the treaty is set in stone, and even if you withdraw it, it's not going to change. So let's say we offer our puppet Krakow here just investment rights and West Galician in exchange for military access. They're our puppets, so we don't really need this, but we're just doing it for fun. And a period of, let's say, 50 years. They've actually declined that, which is funny because that tells me either A, a bug is active, or the game is bugging out because we tried to give military access and we don't need it. So let's just offer them the state here with investment rights. We do have to wait a few days. All right, so it looks like certain things are still not working. In this case, I believe it is state transfer to puppets, because obviously you as the overlord, you can just go in, you can say, hey, this is yours now, deal with it. So there are still a certain few number of bugs in here, but the bug involving where they wouldn't agree to treaties that they would agree with, that is generally fixed now. In some cases, Russia would have just straight up denied that anyway, even though it said they would accept it. That does seem to be functioning roughly as intended now. And let's see, any final thoughts? The treaty system is very fun. There is a few more to go over, like law commitment. This was actually nerfed quite recently, and also you can't use it unless you are... Well, actually, we can use it on the Netherlands, but we can't get law commitment ourselves. What law commitment does is it lets you say, hey, you're going to do this law, you're going to try to pass this law. There's usually a 30-article reluctance, unless you're offering things in exchange where they want to pass that anyway. You actually see here the Netherlands is unsure about a defense pact with us because of how cautious they are. It's a 57% chance, and they do decline it. That is intentional, because that's basically a 50-50 dice roll. Let's find Russia to show you the law commitment. Basically, this is saying, we agree that we are going to pass at some point within the next couple of years, agrarianism. So now we're committed to passing this. There are some caveats to this. If your interest groups would not like that law, they're going to get a 20-year decaying modifier disapproving of that. The reason why it has such weight bound to it, though, is because when you go to pass it, you're going to get a 15% modifier increase to passing it as a success chance. This used to be 25, but was nerfed to 15 because it's a bit too strong, and really good for nations like Russia, Qing, and Japan to just boost through laws early on. It'll also give you about a period of roughly 6 months to begin trying to pass it before you are no longer fulfilling your treaty obligations, in which case your part of the treaty will disable. And how that works, I almost forgot to mention that, which would have been really bad. You can tell I'm not using a script today. As how this works is, let's say we go ahead and we make this agreement with Spain. And we also offer to transfer 12 cannon to them. All right, we have that agreement. If for whatever reason we as Germany are no longer able to send them 12 artillery, maybe we just no longer have the supply anymore, anything Spain is giving us will be disabled. We will no longer have our investment rights. We won't have our trade privileges. Spain will not be obligated to fulfill these until we are fulfilling our obligation again. So if we decide we don't want to actually pass agrarianism here, Russia's obligations to us through the treaty in about the next 5 to 6 months will disable until we start committing to actually passing that law. This is considered a minor breach of the law of the treaty. It disables a part of the treaty, but it doesn't outright break it. There are certain instances, though, where a major breach of the treaty instantly ends the treaty, with the one violating it being considered having withdrawn from it in violation of the treaty itself. Diplomatic speak aside, this means if Spain were to be attacked by Britain and we choose to just declare neutrality in that diplomatic play, not even just don't join them, if we choose to be neutral, this will be considered a violation of the treaty because we have a defense pact and Spain is being attacked and can call us in. This will immediately end the entire treaty, breaking it, and we as Germany would be considered in violation of the treaty. We would get any of the associated penalties of withdrawing from it early, and in some cases it does tell you about the infamy here. So let's say we did that right now and we withdrew from it because Britain attacked Spain and we just declared neutrality. Well, we get that infamy, we get a massive opinion penalty with Spain, who now hates us, and of course that would be another stack of the untrustworthy country modifier, in this case a 20% because it included a defense pact with other articles. So treaties can be really fun to play around with, especially as the hotfixes have patched up most of the issues with the AI being very erratic on their agreements. There is also transit rights. This is useless for anyone who has a port, but say you're Sweden, transit rights are a godsend. Without transit rights, you cannot trade through the world market. But this does mean for Switzerland, say France gets into a war with Britain and is blockaded, Switzerland could lose all of its world market access because it's getting that world market access through France's Normandy hub, which is where their world market hub is. So transit rights are good for landlocked countries to trade with the wider world, but you better make sure the person you're trading with or using transit rights with isn't about to just get destroyed and lose all access rights. There's also the non-colonization agreement, where you can just agree to not colonize in certain strategic regions. This will usually be Africa, and usually something you would give a great power in exchange for something else. They will usually only agree to that if you're able to conduct such colonization. And if you aren't able to do any of that, you have no source of colonial growth, they really won't care. And they're pretty reluctant to agree to that themselves. Although not as reluctant as giving a state, it is up to -50 at a base level. So it is very possible for you to maybe get Britain to agree, if they don't hate you, to not colonize various areas. Although if they are wanting to acquire colonies, it is more difficult. So yes, AI behaviors do matter a great deal here. Are they pursuing economic imperialism? They're more likely to accept investment rights into your country. Do they want colonies? Well, they're going to be less likely to agree to not colonize. And then, of course, similar ideological governments, maintaining the balance of power, all kinds of different things that the AI is thinking will have an effect on their decisions. Defend the borders, they're going to be less likely to agree to give you military access. Of course, there's a lot of reasons why Belgium might refuse military access to Germany. Defending the borders and being in a different power block are two other things. But you can also make agreements with subjects, such as the East India Company, for example. Say, maybe we want to be able to invest in the East India Company, and perhaps in the future, instead, we might want to incite some rebellion, which the EAC might agree to be gifted if, say, they're not very happy with their current overlord. Although they're more of a aloof attitude, so this is more like encouraging insurrection, really. You can even take their debt too, military assistance, military access. They just won't agree if we want investment rights, because that's something we get. Actually, it's because they don't want investment rights, so they're not getting swindled into agreeing to something they don't want. It is potentially possible to get a treaty port in them as well. I don't think this really does anything because of rank differences, though. Since great power and great power can't really have it together. It is hard to say because it's hard to earn. But if we were to go through a few other ones here, you know what? We can actually check it out right now. So they did agree. We have our little treaty port down here. Oh! This actually works. We can have treaty ports and great powers again through their subjects. That's definitely a loophole I should not be showing, that I'm going to show anyway because I think it's funny. And we're actually going to let this take along really quick to show you, but this is How this effectively functions is that the treaty port can do trade centers. It acts as if it's in the market, but you control that building, as well as any trades it might do. Now, we got it in a very bad province that has practically nothing in it. So there actually really is next to nothing for it to actually fundamentally trade here. So it's not really functioning due to that. But this is an active treaty port in the British market. So it is very much doable to get treaty ports. This might be a way to abuse Britain, actually. I have to test this later. Finding things while you're recording is probably the most funnest thing in this game. And recording in general. You can also offer the join power block in articles, but you don't have to do this. You can still invite them as normal. And you can only do that when you have enough leverage anyway, so it's not something you can just walk up and offer on a limb guaranteed. You do need to, oh, this is to offer to join their power block. That makes so much more sense. Yeah, you do need the leverage. There it is. I was going to say, where's my leverage? There are also the potentials of company monopolies, which is basically saying, you know, my company gets all monopoly rights in your steel mills. Only my company gets to build those in your country. You won't be able to build them. Your companies won't be able to build them. Only I get to build them. The AI is usually reluctant to agree to this, but they're usually pretty open to the idea of being given company monopolies if they have a company. Obviously, the Netherlands doesn't have one, so they really don't care. Something else to note, say Krakow here, which I was working on, you can, I might have mentioned it before, offer them investment rights. Now, they're not happy because they rejected a previous treaty that didn't work. But we could agree to this. Krakow can now invest and build into me, even though they're my subject. We also have a similar agreement with the East India Company, even though, you know, they're someone else's subject right now. They're not my subject, they're Britain's subject. So that offers some potential weird circumstances too, where say, hey, Krakow has this grain fellowship. This is my subject, but I just used a treaty to give my subject investment rights. It means exactly what you're thinking. Your subjects can establish companies. These companies could go on to own buildings in your nation. Now, of course, this actually requires the country in question to have enough money to actually buy things. In Krakow's case, it's Krakow. They have as much money as Switzerland does right now, which is to say not a lot in the game. But it's something I did before with Jamaica as the United States. I gave Jamaica investment rights, and once they established a regional HQ in my country, it used my investment pool, and their company started buying up all the coffee plantations. It acted as an additional company, even though it wasn't my company. So there's a lot of things you can do with treaty articles. Like, again, Russia, we could go over here, offer them investment rights, and then offer their company monopoly rights on wood. Say they agree to that, well, guess what? You can kind of still build them here. Actually, I couldn't remember if it was on purpose that the nation itself could build the logging camp still or not. It looks like you, the nation, can still build it, but this company has a monopoly. Only they get to own it. And keep in mind, once you activate a monopoly, you are forced to privatize. So it looks like you, the nation, you can actually still build. I have to correct myself on that. That was likely a bug before where you couldn't. But you're forced to privatize it because of the monopoly, and that Russian-American company will now get to own all of them. But remember, it's still going to give its bonuses. That's kind of a touchback to the company video with trade and companies, because that's still important to note. And I think that kind of wraps it up for diplomacy. It is still the same, but significantly different. Treaties are pretty fun to play around with, and the 1.9.5 hotfix has mostly fixed issues with it. There are still a few bugs in them, but the vast majority of your treaty shenanigans should now function as intended. They have included fixing it to where you can't just infinitely debt dump on great powers now, because that was definitely not intended, and GPs were going bankrupt, so cool. And also, yes, if you withdraw from this treaty, like always, you're going to get lots of penalties, and boy, can these penalties stack up. So be careful. With that said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below. I will do my best to answer all of them. I might not get them all right, but I'll do my best to get you the information, and I will see you all next time.